Welcome back to another Professional Picks college basketball video. Had a little break for the Super Bowl, but we're going to be getting back to even more videos now for the remainder of the season. In today's video, we got the ranked SEC matchup for Wednesday, February 14th, or Valentine's Day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and let us know what you're taking in the comments or if there's any other games you would like to hear some analysis on. Let's get right into the matchup. Auburn enters this game at 19-5, and they're 13 in the AP poll, while South Carolina is actually 21-3 and 11 in the AP poll. Off the bat, to me, this spread seemed really large. I know Auburn is the better team, and they're at home, but I was definitely not expecting this to be an 11.5-point spread. But I do think they hit it right on the money. I know South Carolina's performing a little bit better than they probably are, and we could look into that with some stats here. But I mean, nobody expected South Carolina to be 21-3 at this point in the season. Despite those two more losses for Auburn, Auburn's still beating their opponents by on average 6.6 points more than South Carolina has. So, I mean, they're winning games by a larger amount, which just tells me South Carolina's finding ways to win games, which is equally as important. But in a game where you're outmatched by 11 points, you might not be close enough to make those couple plays on the end that make the difference. South Carolina does deserve some credit, though. They have a big win over Kentucky last month, and then a few days later, or a week later, they won at Tennessee, which in my mind, Tennessee's a great program. They play insanely well defensively, right up there with Houston. So that win at Tennessee kind of took them out of fraud watch in my mind. I do think this will end up being a tournament team. I mean, they are 21-3, but the AP poll and pretty much everyone's been really slow to kind of give them that credit. Finally moving up to 11 now. But looking into the KenPom numbers a little bit deeper, Auburn has played the tougher schedule so far. And I don't normally look at the stat, but there's the stat luck on KenPom, and I think that paints a really pretty picture for this matchup. Auburn is 332nd in luck out of 362 teams, so they're at the very, very bottom there. They're the lowest in the top 25 in luck, other than Michigan State, and this is according to KenPom rankings. Michigan State, I don't care that they're 15-9. They're still a good team in my mind. You don't want to see them down the stretch. You don't want them to sneak into the tournament. But, I mean, these are two great teams that miss a couple calls here or there. But Auburn being in that same bucket as Michigan State in the top 25 as far as luck goes, I mean, I like the company there. It just means these teams aren't getting those 50-50 calls, yet they're still finding ways to win games, especially Auburn for that matter. On the other hand, South Carolina is 16th in luck, which is way up there for a factor that is almost arbitrary to how the teams play. We're talking 50-50 calls, just calls by the ref, or 50-50 balls in general. We have to think this falls closer to the median. And we get a couple more calls for Auburn here. I mean, they are at home in this one. You can also argue on the flip side, Bruce Pearl probably is going to hurt you on some calls. He's a hothead. I mean, that's how he gets his guys fired up, but he can rub some refs the wrong way. I'm not too worried about it, though, because they are at home in this game. I think he's going to maybe get a couple more calls than they have, at least so far this season. And they're 12-0 at home. They're up by a good amount. I mean, you still see coaches get ejected when they're up, but more often than not, it's when you're losing the game pretty bad. So I don't think Bruce Pearl's going to hurt him here. I mean, he's a good coach. He's brought this program to a really good standing here. But I just think this luck factor just shows how South Carolina is winning these games by a couple points here and there, getting those big plays down the stretch. But especially for this matchup, an 11-point game, 11.5-point spread, like I mentioned at the start of the video, I don't think you're going to look out on a couple 50-50 calls that decide the game. I think the talent discrepancy is just too much in this one. So, I mean, basically I already said it. I'm not going to dance around it. The pick is Auburn minus 11.5 in this game. If they fall behind early, which, I mean, they absolutely could, I think it could be a tough read because South Carolina plays extremely slow on the offensive end. And this has kind of been their calling card and how they've been able to keep games so close all season. They hold the ball for almost the full 30 seconds until they get the shot they want or just really wear down that defense. And that could really hurt Auburn if they do fall that behind early because I have them here as balanced. They are really good at everything. The one thing they're not that great at is perimeter shooting. If they're down and have to hit some threes to get back into it. It doesn't really play into their game plan. At the same time, I'm not too worried about it. They should dominate the boards in this matchup, especially against the South Carolina front court. BJ Mack, 6'8", 270, I believe. He's a big guy, but he's not the tallest. Doesn't shoot above 50%, which you normally see from some efficient posts. But I still got to give it to Johnny Broome in that matchup, just being the bigger, more athletic, and more solidified player in the SEC. On top of that, Auburn's winning home conference games. I mean, just throw non-conference out the window. Just SEC home conference games. Auburn's winning them on average by 18.8 points. That clears the spread by over 7. And just more getting into the narrative. But South Carolina has won their last 7 games. I mean, I think this is going to flip. I don't think this is a dominant team that's going to just win out the rest of the way. It's going to be one they drop. It's probably going to be this game. I mean, the spread clearly indicates that. Will it be more than 12 points? I think so in this one, especially if they fall behind earlier. They're going to have to speed up. Doesn't really fall into their game plan. Auburn is the much deeper team. They play 10 deep, pretty much 2 platoons, so I'm not worried about fouls. It's why they could rebound so hard. It's why they could cause turnovers. That's one other stat that initially looks like you're going to give the advantage to South Carolina. They turn the ball over less, but Auburn creates twice as many turnovers on the defensive end, so that basically cancels out that positive for South Carolina. So I really only give South Carolina the advantage here in 3-point shooting, which is really not enough, especially for a team that's not a great 3-point shooting team. Yes, they got some shooters, but I mean, technically they're just better than Auburn in this matchup. And then going into a little bit more, I know Meechie Johnson's solid, transfer from Ohio State, was here last year, but I mean, they were bad last year. He was really inefficient. He's been playing well so far. He's their leading scorer, but the last few games he's been more inefficient than he has been the rest of the season. It looks like he might be falling off a little bit, or just back into the previous player he was. Obviously won't be that bad, but Auburn's a great defensive team. They have the bodies, put a guy like KD Johnson on them, and just be physical with them for the full game. I don't see Meechie Johnson taking this game over, is my point. I don't see anybody on the South Carolina side taking this game over. BJ Mack was the other X factor that we already mentioned. I mean, he shoots under 50% from the post spot, which isn't a great number at the center. And they really don't have that many other posts to bring in. They got some bigger guards like Zachary Davis and Colin Murray Boyles, but as a whole, this Auburn team is just a group of men, and South Carolina is definitely good, but as far as depth, size, athleticism, they're lacking in a lot of key categories here. I don't think it'll be enough for them to even cover this spread. Don't be afraid of the 11.5. I like it a lot. I think Auburn could win this game by 20. Not that I'm going to take it, but I think they could absolutely do that. And it hurts me to say because I normally like teams like South Carolina who just find ways to win games, play slower on the offensive end. Reminds me of a little bit like Virginia, but in my mind, this is more of a knockoff Virginia. Their defense doesn't crack the top 50. It's solid, but they're not quite there. And they're not just playing anyone else in this matchup. Like we said earlier, they've had an easier strength of schedule, so they've taken some advantage of that. But the flaws are going to be exposed in this game. And my last point, which is just a tidbit, I would clearly never make your picks based off another random game. But if you're worried about South Carolina staying in this one, keep it close. For example, South Carolina had a 27-point loss on the road to Alabama. Not saying that's going to happen again, but I view Auburn very similarly to Alabama. I mean, these are two great teams. They don't play the same, but they're both top 10 teams in my mind. Alabama, much more on the offensive end. Auburn, a little bit more balanced play. These are two top teams, and I just think Auburn can absolutely run away with this game, especially in this spot. That's it for this video. Let me know what you're taking in the comments, if you guys are tailing or fading, and then we're going to have a couple more previews coming out later this week. Thanks for watching.